Crawl space, part 4. In the earlier versions, we did see safety, we talked about timbers, we talked about hydronic piping. Now we'll talk about some structural and wood-boring insects. Here you can see some main beams, steel beams that come down through the floors, and this is a great place to look at the column supports and the piers, and to look to see if they're properly fastened or if those column supports are cracking from the loading. And you can see here where they're not, and they're in very nice shape, and that black thing that you see is actually a steel beam coming through. So really good place to look at the columns that project up to the upper structure. Also you want to look at the spans, and sometimes the spans are long and floors deflect, and in this particular case there's plenty of beams, and the 2x10s and 2x12s were not overspanned, and so the floors are rather level on the upper structure. The joist and wood timbers also appear to be in good shape and free from any type of wood-boring insect. Now, we didn't look at all of them, but the ones we did look at, we did not see exit holes. Exit holes are little small pinholes that you would see from what is called powder post beetle activity. Now, powder post beetles do love crawl spaces, especially when they're wet, muddy, and you have moisture contents of 20% and greater. This crawl space didn't quite fit that criteria. Carpenter ants are very common in crawl spaces, mostly at areas where there's continuous wetness. For example, if gutters leaked all the time, or the brick was leaking, and let's say a band joist pocket was wet, and this would be an area where a satellite carpenter ant colony may exist. Now, termites can be in wet or moist areas depending on species. In Ohio, we have subterranean termites, but usually you'll see these shelter tubes or mud tunnels that would go up the columns, and you would see mud and tunnels and galleries through the beams and timbers, and we didn't see that. And termites also do like moist areas. As we were going through the crawl space, we found many different rooms and cavities, and generally when people build buildings and homes, they will put up foundation walls or partition walls, and many times they are brick or masonry or stone, and then you have these little small areas where they may not be accessible for the inspection. So you have to kind of do the best you can. The joists also rest on the walls, and when they rest on the walls, you want to make sure that there's good bearing. Sometimes the joists go into the wall and into the masonry, and those are areas where you can see deterioration if there is exterior water infiltration or leakage. So always look at the perimeter where the joists rest on the walls or go into the walls. Those are areas, especially in older buildings, where deterioration exists. Also, look for joist hangers. These are hangers that minimize deflection of floors. Back 100 years ago, it probably wasn't common to see joist hangers, and this would be considered structural maintenance. So whenever I see joists that are nailed or toe-nailed into beams, or kind of just floating around boxes and things of that nature, we recommend installing joist hangers, because over time the joists do pull apart, and that can cause the floors to be deflected. Another item that we look at are the way the beams rest on top of the center piers and columns, and you want to look at the shims. A lot of times the wood shims are adequate, sometimes they'll have steel shims, or sometimes the columns settle and there's gaps, and so those are very important to look at as well. This is going to be the end of recording number 4. Please watch recording number 5.